The day the bank called, I was in the garage, fixing the old lawnmower. The engine rattled under my hands, louder than my thoughts. I answered the phone with a careful calm, as if calm could shield me. The voice on the other side didn't waste words. Our business account was overdrawn. Debts had piled faster than we could track. I let the phone slip from my hand, landing on the concrete floor. The garage smelled like oil and damp wood, yet the weight felt heavier. I stepped outside, the Pacific Northwest sky gray, low, oppressive. My wife, Mara, stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Anything?" she asked, her voice tight, almost brittle. I didn't answer immediately. How could I explain months of miscalculations, missed invoices, and forgotten deadlines? I finally said, "We're in trouble. Serious trouble." Her face shifted, the initial shock folding into controlled anger. She turned away, running her fingers through her hair, pacing the small porch. The kids came out, unaware at first. Lily, 15, asked if everything was okay. Ethan, 12, fidgeted with his backpack straps. I crouched, meeting their eyes, attempting reassurance I didn't feel. "We'll figure it out," I said. I knew the words were empty, but the pause helped, just a little. Inside the house, we sat around the kitchen table. Bills stacked like miniature towers, letters from creditors scattered. Mara spoke first, voice trembling despite her effort to remain steady. "Maybe we need to sell the house," she suggested. I nodded slowly, the thought heavy in my chest. Selling meant leaving behind stability, memories, routines. But it also meant survival, a chance to start small. We spent the day talking, not about blame, but logistics. Our conversation felt like threading a needle in a storm. Even in crisis, Mara's empathy surfaced, softening the tension. I admired her strength and feared it, knowing our pride often clashed with necessity. By evening, the kids had gone to their rooms, tired of adult conversations. Mara and I sat in the living room, silence stretching between us. I thought of the old neighbor, Joan, who had once helped us with small repairs. Maybe she could advise on starting a smaller venture, perhaps a modest project, something manageable together. The idea sparked a flicker of light in a room heavy with shadows. Mara noticed it too, her eyes reflecting cautious hope. We didn't speak of it immediately, just sat with a possibility. Night fell, rain tapping gently on the roof. I lay awake, replaying every misstep, every hurried decision that led here. Yet, within the turmoil, the thought of working alongside Mara again brought a calm. Small beginnings, shared effort, tangible progress, it could restore something we had lost. I drifted toward sleep, the future uncertain but slightly less frightening. Morning came with mist curling around the neighborhood, damp and soft. I brewed coffee, strong, bitter, as if it could sharpen my thoughts. Mara joined me at the small kitchen island, silent at first. We shared a glance heavy with unspoken questions, shared history, and quiet fears. "I called Joan," I said finally. Her eyes widened slightly, a mix of relief and surprise. She nodded, waiting for me to explain. Joan agreed to meet that afternoon. Her small workshop smelled of sawdust and varnish, the scent oddly comforting. She listened as we detailed our plans, finances, and mistakes. She didn't judge, just asked questions, probing gently for weaknesses and strengths. Her insight was practical, grounded, yet encouraging. "You need something manageable, something you can control together," she said. Her voice was steady, unlike the chaos of our thoughts. Back home, we began planning in earnest. Mara took notes while I sketched rough ideas on paper. The children peeked in, occasionally, curious but hesitant to interrupt. We laughed quietly at small mishaps: spilled ink, smudged sketches, clumsy tape measurements. For a moment, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt alive. The air, once thick with stress, seemed lighter, almost breathable. I noticed Mara watching me while I worked, her expression unreadable. I remembered why I loved her resilience, even in despair. She spoke softly. "We can do this, slowly, but together." Her words carried weight, anchored my wandering thoughts. I realized rebuilding wasn't about pride or speed. It was about partnership, about accepting the past mistakes and turning them into something tangible. We set small goals, lists, schedules, tiny milestones that felt achievable. Every completion, every checkmark brought a quiet satisfaction. The children saw us working together and began participating. Small tasks, minor responsibilities. Our home, once tense and heavy, started to feel like a cooperative space again. Even Ethan smiled genuinely, asking about projects with curiosity, not fear. By evening, we stood outside, surveying our makeshift workspace in the garage. The sun broke briefly through clouds, illuminating scattered tools and half-finished projects. I felt a cautious pride, fragile but real. Mara leaned against me, shoulder brushing mine, a silent acknowledgement of shared effort. This was our starting point, modest yet meaningful. We had lost much, but not each other, and that counted for everything. The mornings grew colder, and the smell of wet pavement lingered. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at invoices spread across the counter. Emily brewed coffee silently, her hands trembling as she poured the dark liquid. Our kids shuffled past, headphones tight over their ears, avoiding any eye contact. The silence felt heavier than any conversation we had shared before. I remembered the months of planning, the meetings, and our shared dreams. They had collapsed, like a fragile house of cards in a storm. My hands gripped the chair edges as memories of pride mixed with fear. I wanted to tell Emily it would be all right, but words failed me. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked insistently, breaking the oppressive quiet. I glanced toward the window, noticing the uneven paint on her fence. She had helped us before, back when business seemed unstoppable and bright. I wondered if she would help again, now that our hopes had dimmed. Emily's eyes met mine, glossy with frustration, yet still full of trust. Her simple nod said more than any conversation could convey at this hour. The kids' laughter, muffled from another room, felt like a fragile promise. I recall the nights spent arguing, deciding who would call which clients. Every plan had failed, yet a small ember of resolve still lingered. I rose and walked to the garage, searching for tools and scraps. The old workbench seemed inviting, a place where creation still felt possible. Emily appeared behind me, hesitant but willing to follow my lead. Together, we lifted boxes of old supplies, dust motes dancing in sunlight. The garage smelled of wood and paint, and suddenly, the space seemed alive. I felt a spark of something long-lost: collaboration, hope, possibility. We laid out the remnants of our failed projects, examining each piece. Emily suggested modifications, subtle adjustments to give new life to old ideas. Her voice held cautious optimism, the kind that feels both fragile and strong. I nodded, impressed by her resilience and her ability to see potential. The kids appeared, curious, despite their morning gloom, peering over the doorway. We involved them slowly, assigning small tasks to make them feel useful. The room filled with movement, laughter, and a tentative sense of purpose. Each small success, sanding a board, painting a corner, restoring something broken, brought a quiet satisfaction we hadn't felt since the collapse of our business. The sun shifted, casting warm light across our efforts, illuminating renewed determination. We paused briefly, breathing in the progress, realizing that recovery was possible. No, it wasn't the grand business we once dreamed of, but it was ours. We were together, creating something tangible, a foundation built on trust. I met Emily's gaze, silently acknowledging the hard road ahead, still shared. The kids smiled, their skepticism melting slowly, replaced by cautious engagement. Even the neighbor peeked in, curious, offering advice and encouragement. I realized we weren't starting from zero. We were beginning with experience. Every mistake, every failure, now felt like preparation for this smaller project. The air felt different, infused with possibility rather than defeat, fragile yet real. Even amidst uncertainty, a new rhythm emerged: shared work, shared hope. I felt the weight of the past week lighten, replaced by steady determination. Emily's laugh, soft and genuine, echoed against the garage walls, warming my chest. The kids joined in, and for a fleeting moment, normalcy seemed within reach. I imagined the coming days, small tasks building toward a tangible result. Each project completed would stitch together our confidence, piece by piece. The neighbor returned later, bringing extra paint and brushes, smiling knowingly. Her presence reminded us that support sometimes comes quietly, without fanfare. By evening, we stepped back to admire our first day's work together. The garage no longer looked like a storage space, but a workshop of hope. I felt Emily squeeze my hand, a silent thank you and acknowledgement. Our children nodded, faces flushed with accomplishment, proud of their contributions. I realized recovery wasn't about grandeur, but about small, shared victories. Each moment of cooperation felt like a thread weaving our fractured family closer. The storm outside had not ended, but inside we had found warmth. Our old ambitions seemed distant, but a new path glimmered in the corner. It was imperfect, humble, yet undeniably ours, built on persistence and trust. We cleaned tools together, laughter punctuating minor mistakes, filling the silence. Even the smallest successes felt monumental, a reminder that progress exists. I paused, inhaling the mixed scents of sawdust and paint, grounding myself. Emily leaned against my shoulder, her trust a steady anchor amid uncertainty. The children left the garage reluctantly, carrying tools back to their rooms. I lingered, gazing at our progress, the promise of continued effort tangible. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows, but it felt distant, insignificant. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning, and we are ready." The night settled over our home, quiet, reflective, filled with cautious optimism. In that shared silence, I finally understood the value of small recoveries. Tomorrow promised more work, more mistakes, but also more moments of connection. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the reassuring weight of family and purpose. Even failure had its lessons, and we had absorbed them carefully, quietly. We were not where we had dreamed, but we were together, moving forward. And that, I realized, was enough to start rebuilding everything that mattered. The following morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the garage windows. Emily was already arranging materials, her brow furrowed in concentration. I joined her, carrying scraps of wood and old blueprints carefully. The kids wandered in cautiously, curiosity outweighing their morning gloom. We began sorting pieces, deciding which could be reused or discarded. Emily suggested turning the smaller pieces into decorative items for local shops. Her ideas sparked something I hadn't felt in weeks, genuine excitement. We divided tasks, sanding, painting, assembling, working side by side. The neighbor stopped by again, offering tips from years of experience. Her advice was practical, precise, and infused with subtle encouragement. Our children began assisting eagerly, their previous hesitation melting away. The rhythm of work replaced the heavy silence that had dominated mornings. Every small success, a painted shelf or restored frame, lifted our spirits. Emily laughed at a misaligned corner, and I felt relief spread inside. It was strange, feeling light amidst lingering debts and uncertainty. The garage walls, once plain and lifeless, now displayed colorful projects. Even minor achievements felt monumental, proof that progress was possible. I noticed the neighbor observing quietly, her smile unspoken but clear. The children took pride in their contributions, discussing which items to keep. Emily's eyes sparkled, a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. I realized that collaboration had healed more than broken tools. It mended spirits. By afternoon, the house smelled of paint, wood, and fresh determination. We stepped back to assess our combined efforts, nodding at the improvements. The kids cheered quietly, proud of the workshop they had helped transform. Emily placed her hand over mine, a silent gesture of shared understanding. Our once fractured household felt a tentative balance returning, fragile yet real. I reflected on the weeks of despair, realizing how much we had endured. Each mistake had guided us toward this small, manageable project. The neighbor offered to display some of our creations in her shop. We agreed gratefully, seeing a chance for small earnings and community support. The sun shifted lower, casting a warm glow across our laborious achievements. We cleaned up, careful not to undo the day's progress, working together efficiently. Emily smiled at the kids, who carried tools back to their rooms reluctantly. I lingered, appreciating the quiet hum of accomplishment, heart steadied. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and clean. I realized that recovery was gradual, built from small, intentional actions. Even amidst uncertainty, each contribution created momentum we could trust. Emily whispered, "We're getting there, one step at a time." and I nodded. The children peeked back, curious, their eyes reflecting the pride in their work. I felt a warmth that had been absent for weeks, almost like forgiveness. Our home, though scarred by past failures, now felt alive and functional. We planned for the next day, eager but measured, avoiding overwhelming ambition. By evening, the garage had become a space of creation and quiet joy. I felt the weight of shared responsibility, balanced by shared accomplishment. Emily and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of perseverance. The kids disappeared to their rooms, leaving us in a brief, peaceful silence. I breathed deeply, savoring the simple satisfaction of rebuilding together. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, marking the close of another day. I realized that hope wasn't a sudden spark, but a steady, growing ember. We weren't fully healed, but the path forward had become visible. I finally understood that progress required patience, trust, and joint effort. Emily rested her head on my shoulder, the quiet connection reaffirming us. The garage smelled faintly of sawdust and paint, but also of possibility. The storm of the past weeks seemed distant, almost irrelevant in this calm. I whispered softly, "We'll continue tomorrow," and she smiled in response. For the first time in months, the house felt like a home again. Even amidst lingering debts, the sense of purpose steadied our hearts. We were not chasing former dreams, but crafting new, attainable ones. And in this small, humble project, we discovered resilience, connection, and hope. The next morning, sunlight streamed across the kitchen table. Emily brewed coffee, steam curling softly into the quiet room. I sipped slowly, appreciating the warmth and the calm between us. The kids moved about, their chatter light, lacking yesterday's tension. We discussed the workshop progress, noting small but meaningful improvements. Our neighbor stopped by, bringing encouragement and a few more tools. Her presence reminded us that support often arrives unexpectedly, quietly. Emily suggested new ideas for community sales, her enthusiasm cautious yet genuine. I nodded, realizing that collaboration had renewed more than our project. The children helped lay out items for inspection, proud of their handiwork. Each painted shelf and repaired frame seemed infused with our collective effort. The house, once burdened with stress, now smelled of possibility and polish. I paused, noticing Emily's smile linger longer than before, unforced. She spoke softly. "We're stronger together than we imagined, aren't we?" I met her gaze, feeling a tentative peace settle inside my chest. The kids joined us, holding small items they wanted to gift the neighbor. The neighbor accepted them with a warm, approving smile, gratitude shining clearly. It was a simple act, but it bridged past failures with present hope. I realized that recovery was measured not in grand gestures, but small victories. Emily suggested we continue creating, but at a pace that felt sustainable. I agreed, understanding that progress required patience and careful intention. The children played outside briefly, laughter echoing down the quiet street. I watched, sensing that the home's energy had shifted toward stability. Even the garage, once a reminder of failure, now radiated purpose and pride. We planned modestly for the coming week, tasks divided and goals set. Emily's hand found mine across the table, a silent confirmation of unity. I reflected on the storm of emotions that had dominated our recent months. Each setback had led us here, toward small triumphs and shared understanding. The neighbor offered to host a mini exhibition, our creations displayed proudly. The kids beamed at the idea, eager to show their work to others. I noticed Emily's eyes glisten with restrained joy, hope barely contained. We cleaned the house methodically, the act itself feeling restorative and grounding. Evening arrived, casting a gentle glow across the tidy, organized spaces. I lingered in the kitchen, listening to Emily's soft humming, heart steadied. The children settled into homework, the quiet hum of domesticity comforting. I realized that stability was fragile, but achievable through daily effort. Emily rested her head on my shoulder, a quiet reassurance of partnership. We didn't need grand plans. The small steps carried weight and meaning. The neighbor waved goodbye, a reminder that connection could be sustaining. I felt a sense of closure with the chaos of the past weeks. Not total, but sufficient. Emily whispered that tomorrow we could begin another small project together. I smiled, the thought of continued collaboration filling me with quiet resolve. The kids peeked in one last time, smiles bright, energy lingering in the rooms. I exhaled, acknowledging that life didn't reset instantly, but progressed incrementally. Our home had become a space of healing, effort, and shared pride. The night fell gently, leaving the street calm, the house alive and content. I understood that hope, once fragile, could grow through consistent care. Emily and I sat together, hands intertwined, comfortable in the simple silence. I realized that our future was not dictated by past failures, but by present commitment. We were not entirely free of worry, but we had regained purpose and connection. The garage, the children, the neighbor, and Emily, each part reinforced resilience. The storm outside had passed, leaving clarity and the possibility of steady growth. I whispered, "We're ready for tomorrow," and Emily squeezed my hand. For the first time in months, I felt truly grounded, ready for life's next chapter. The house, our family, and the small project together symbolized a tentative restoration. Even amidst uncertainty, the steady hum of cooperation promised continuity and hope. I closed my eyes briefly, savoring the quiet certainty of shared labor. Emily rested her head against mine, warmth and understanding bridging past anxieties. We were not back to where we began, but we were moving forward together. I watched the night settle over the neighborhood, serene and undemanding. The children slept upstairs, exhausted but content from their contribution. I realized that progress, though incremental, could repair more than just physical spaces. Emily whispered, "We're building more than shelves, aren't we?" And I nodded. The answer was clear. We were rebuilding trust, connection, and quiet hope. I felt gratitude for this slow, careful recovery, humble and real. Together, we face tomorrow with steady hearts, not free of fear, but aligned.